Welcome back to another Quick Truth. My name is Derek Truesdale, and this week I want to start another book discussion, and this time I want to cover the book of James. The book of James is a very practical book. It has a lot of things that just get right down to earth and let you put it right into practice. And just a little background on the author, it's most likely authored by James, the brother of Jesus. It's like the half-brother of Jesus. So Mary had Jesus when she was a virgin, and then she had more children after that. And the first one of those was James. And James is most likely the one that wrote this book. And that James, he was very respected. He didn't actually believe in Jesus at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, but after everything happened, he actually becomes a believer, and he, starts out this book by saying, I'm the servant of God and of Jesus Christ. So he's just saying, if your sibling, became God and, you believed in him, it'd be really difficult to squelch your own pride and be able to follow your sibling, but that's what James had to do, and that's what he did. So he's very respected in the early church. He was actually the pastor in Jerusalem, and everyone really respected James. So that's most likely the author of this book. And as you go through it, it has a lot of just very practical things. It kind of sounds like Proverbs sometimes, and it also kind of parallels the Sermon on the Mount. So a lot of the things that are spoken of there with Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount are repeated here in a way. So that's a little bit of the background of James, and I just want to start out this week and looking at the first idea found in the book of James, and that's found in chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Those verses say, James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes in the dispersion, greetings. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So as you look at those verses, he starts out by saying, count it all joy. And that's difficult to do because, especially if you look at the early church, when they're being persecuted, and you have the Jewish people who, really the church is beginning with the Jewish people, and Jewish people are already kind of looked down upon in their early cultures anyway. And when you became a Christian, you were looked down by even the Jews. So the Jewish person who became a Christian is looked down by culture in general, usually, and then also their own people. So it's a very difficult thing to be an early Christian as a Jewish person. So they're having a lot of testing. And what James is saying, he's saying, I know it's tough to be a Christian during this time, but count that as joy. And he kind of tells why through here, how we can count it as joy. But as we look at our lives, it's difficult to be a Christian today as well. We have a lot of different testing, a lot of different things happen in our lives. And when those tests come into our life, do we let that destroy our faith and make us doubt and make us believe God doesn't really care about us? Or do we use that testing to make us stronger and to believe more deeply in the fact that God is for us and God is there? So what James is saying is to take those testings and the difficult times and count them as joy. But that takes work. He says, when he says count it as joy, it's like taking account of it. Take account of this situation as being joyful. And that takes work to be able to see things in that light. And, it's very difficult to get to that point. I'm not to that point. So when difficult things come, are we looking at it with the right eyes? Do we see it through the right filter? So he's saying when these things happen, this is testing of our faith. He says it's a test, and are we passing the test when these things happen, or are we failing the test? So obviously, like we were saying, the early church had to endure a lot of different things. It was very difficult to be a Christian in that day because it was persecuted. And when you look at these persecutions, these people who would go through them and they would give up and they would say, I'm not a Christian any longer, it was just too tough. Their faith wasn't genuine. They walked away from the faith. They left us because they were not of us. So when we go through things, when we have difficult times, do we let that kick us out? Do we give up on our faith? Or, is our faith genuine? Do we take those testings and accept them for what they are? We go through the test, and it's not fun to go through those tests, but once we get to the other side, it produces steadfastness. It produces joy. We can be happy that we're done with it. We can be happy that we've grown from that situation as well. So as we look at, 2020 just passed, it's still happening now. It's been a tough year. Things have just not been easy. A lot of different testing in a lot of different ways. So as we look at these testings and this thing that's been happening throughout this whole year, our faith has been put to the test. Your faith has been put to the test. So, in this test, are you passing the test? Are you letting these situations, they're tough, and it's no one's belittling that. It's very, very tough. But it's a test all the same because God is still there. God's still in control. Are we letting these testings build our faith and become more deeply entrenched in our faith and more convinced? Or are we letting it sideline our faith and kick the feet out from under it? Are we letting it destroy our faith, and are we walking away from God? We need to use these testings and grow from them. So this testing, as he says here, it produces a steadfastness, and we should let that steadfastness have its full effect, that we may be perfect. So it's growing something in us. These testings grow character. And a lot of us know saints and Christians that seem like they're just so mature and they can go through anything, and any kind of trial is not too difficult. So you see drastic things happen in their lives, and it seems like, if that was me, wow, I would be doubting so much, and I don't know if I can make it through that. But you see these Christians, and they do make it through it, and it builds their faith, and they come out the other side, and they help others. And that can be an encouragement for us because they're doing it. It's like they're passing the testing of the faith. We've seen it happen. And Spurgeon goes through these same verses, and he compares it to a person who's been at sea all their life, a sailor. And they're older, and they're, brown, and they can just go out, and they're tough, and it doesn't matter what the weather is. They can go out and just go and do what they need to do in any kind of weather, in any storm. And the fact that they're like that and they can weather anything didn't happen overnight. It happened over a long span of time, and they got their sea legs, and they can go out and do whatever they need to do. That doesn't happen instantly. It takes a lifetime of enduring things on the sea and doing different situations and having really difficult tasks consistently to be able to get to that point. So in our Christian lives, we can become like that. We can be, tough, and we can be able to handle a lot of different situations without it really destroying our faith over time. But it takes those trials and it takes the tough times to get to that point, to become mature. So when you see a Christian that's mature and nothing can ruffle them, and they have joy, a deep-seated joy that really situations cannot touch, it's because they've gone through these things. They've experienced it. You can't have an extremely happy life with no trials and become a mature Christian. It doesn't work like that. James tells us it takes this testing to get to that point. So when these things happen to us, and they are happening, 2020 has been very difficult, are we letting that destroy our faith? Or are we passing the test? Are we growing more in our faith because of these things? So this has been another Quick Truth. Next week I will cover more of the book of James. Thanks for watching. God bless, and I'll see you next time.